Good morning, everyone. This is Aaron the Pedantic. I am today going to be reading one of my blog posts. This was requested by one of the viewers, and I plan on doing more of these in the future if they are desired. My blog posts tend to be more pointed and direct when it comes to certain issues, whereas my videos tend to be a little bit more sporadic, I would say. So, this one today is what makes magic items interesting. So this was from September 2020. The question hath been raised, the answer shall be found, hopefully. As anyone familiar with my blogging, my tweets, or my videos will know, I am mostly an amalgamation of a ton of incomplete thoughts. Occasionally, those thoughts find something that makes sense. Then they spit it out for others to see it and revise as needed. Here's what I've got for magic items right now. Number 1, risk versus reward. This should be no surprise, especially to fans of old school gaming. One of the things that really lights our fire for gaming is the desire to have to make difficult choices and to see the ramifications of those choices. This is the essence of role-playing, as opposed to telling a story or acting. Here's your situation, what do you do? Magic items have the capacity to introduce risk versus reward in two ways. Earning the magic item can be an exercise in risk versus reward, and using the magic item can be an exercise in risk versus reward. Perhaps the characters are delving into the tombs of a long dead and despised pharaoh. Buried with his riches by a populace terrified of his curse, the architect of the crypt who knew how to avoid the traps is long dead. Perhaps the riches are the goal, or the vanquishing of the evil stirring within is the goal. But the group sees an all too easily accessed jeweled scimitar in the hands of a stone statue beside the pharaoh's sarcophagus. Perhaps a historian could reveal that the statue is of the pharaoh's sworn guardian, who is thought to be immortal. Immediately, the players are going to think that thing is probably a trap. Maybe it awakens all of the stone statues in this place, and we're going to be overwhelmed. Maybe there's some horrific curse on it. Either way, we might be fucked if we grab this thing, or we might have a powerful weapon. This dilemma is an interesting component that is introduced that's not unlike the pulling of a mysterious lever, but with the added potential for more shenanigans. A benefit that they can take with them that's sitting right in front of them, daring to be utilized. Let's say they decide to take it. Do they grab it barehanded, or do they handle it in layers of cloth to avoid direct touch? Can they identify it, or do they? Or do they pay some poor mook to handle it for them and see what happens? Let's just say they grab the thing. The wielder now has a +2 magic sword with a hatred for traitors that allows it to sap the life right out of them. 2d4 HP drain, let's say. But has a temporary curse that fills the wielder with the will of the guardian. The guardian demands that the intruders surrender their earnings and leave the tomb. The wielder must pass a save versus magic or be taken over for 10 minutes, at which point the wielder will attack anyone holding a belonging of the pharaoh's. They repeat the saving throw every 10 minutes, and after 24 hours, the curse goes away. The players don't know how long this will last. All they know is that their friend is compromised and is threatening to kill them if they don't hand over the goods and leave. This adds even more uncertainty. Should they kill the wielder? Should they cast sleep on them and bind them up? Will they have to get this curse lifted by a cleric or through some kind of purification ritual? Uncertainty raises tension. At the end of the day, the players end up with a powerful magic weapon that has a personality and a history. That's cool. Number 2, more opportunities for creative problem solving. The second thing that magic items offer is a manner by which the players can creatively deal with problems that are in front of them. Perhaps you draw your frostband to snuff out all the nearby lights as you burst into a room, your dark vision giving you an edge over your human prey. Perhaps you use a portable hole to breach the wall of an otherwise impregnable fortress. Perhaps you use a bottomless vessel of water to drown kobolds hiding in a pit that are terrorizing the local population. Maybe you've been tossed off a cliff, so you grab an immovable rod from your bag and continuously reactivate it to slow your descent and safely land on the bottom. The more bizarre the magic item, the more interesting it'll be when your players find a creative use for them. Number 3, setting significance. The third thing that comes to mind when you have magical items that have a particular significance to the world around the PCs. This can obviously be achieved with mundane items, but adding a magical quality to it adds levity to the notion that these things are indeed mystical. Think of Excalibur, for instance. Think of various items of myth and legend that belong to great rulers or merciless warriors. For NPCs to recognize, acknowledge, and covet these items makes the players prize them even more. Perhaps bearing the shield of Aelon the Conqueror makes you the rightful heir to his ancestral house, guarded by legions of moss-covered undead who wait for the return of its bearer to go to rest. Maybe the sword you find has a prophecy of ushering in a new era of bloodshed, murder, and darkness, and those who recognize it wish to relieve you of it and send it to the depths of the ocean. Not every magic item should have all of these components, but any magic item that has none of these components is boring. And in a system like 5th edition, where magic is all over the place, your casters can throw cantrips all day and night, ye old, well, it's a +0 or greater, so you can actually hurt this creature, isn't a trope you can rely on to make a magic item stand out. So that was the blog post. I hope you enjoyed it. I do have a little bit of postscript that I wanted to add. You know, like I said, this was written in September, so it wasn't that long ago. Just over 4 months, but I wanted to kind of put into perspective like what has changed since then and what my thoughts have been on all that, what kind of led to the point where I wrote that particular blog entry. Well, when I started doing role-playing games, I received my first magic item probably on the 3rd session, I think. And it was really cool to me when that happened. And so just to give an idea of what exactly happened, the DM basically went through each of our characters and described how we had these visions. And these visions were supposed to reinforce what exactly we're supposed to accomplish. We were visited by our patrons, our deities, pretty much, I guess that's kind of where it falls, honestly. And they gave us these magical artifacts. And I remember whenever that happened, it was really cool to me. Our characters were fairly low level. And I was a cleric. And so for the most part, as a cleric, I could basically just kind of like try and whack people with a club, with a mace, and not a whole lot more. And, I was new to the hobby, and I saw everyone else doing a lot of ass kicking, and I wasn't really doing a whole lot. And then here I was given this holy mace, basically. Actually, it was a warhammer that could make doors explode, kind of. It was very, very cool. And I really loved the intent behind it. You know, the idea that we were kind of destined for something. It really it was very cool. By that point, I kind of had realized that D&D was not what I thought it was, because whenever I went into the hobby, I thought it was going to be this very deadly game that's all about survival and resource management, all that kind of stuff. And to an extent, in 5th edition, it still was, but to such a lesser extent that it's not really what it felt like. It feels more like epic fantasy. So then I was given something that made me feel a little bit more in line with epic fantasy, and I liked it. And then the campaign, just as it went on, our DM changed. He didn't DM for too terribly long, but we enjoyed him while we had him. And then it was, I would say, we had some neat moments, some very interesting fights. And that's really what I remember most as a player, are the fights, and then a few moments of like intense, well, not intense, actually definitely not intense, but really just goofy role playing, just being our characters and just dealing with the goofy situations that would arise. We had Chelsea's character was a wild magic sorcerer, and at one point she turned into a potted plant because she tried to cast a spell. And, just kind of goofy situations like that, which would arise. And then our DM's rather clever ways of presenting certain characters that were kind of meme-worthy. But all in all, the magic weapons kind of didn't really do anything in the end. And so that kind of painted my perspective a little bit. And as someone who ran 5th edition for some time, I basically at that point kind of decided I really am not a huge fan of this way of going about things, but I am going to do it a little bit. So in my first campaign, I actually gave one of the players an artifact that would basically grow in power with him as he carried on through the campaign. And it was something that he seemed to enjoy, and the rest of the group thought was pretty cool. But as I went along, I started to realize that there were so many things that were just kind of like, well, Aaron feels like, so you get. And this, to me, the more I thought about it, the more that I took some time to decide, what would I really want as a player? Like, I always wanted the feeling of being rewarded because of things that I did. As in, I did something that I didn't have to do that could have gone poorly for me. And as a result, something happened. And I thought that was great. And that the problem is that can still fall under the idea of you get something because I give it to you because I think that you're a good boy or something like that. And that wasn't really far enough for me. And so I started getting into old school modules, DCC for one, which has a lot of things that have an old school feel to them. Joseph Goodman's People of the Pit was one that I really liked, and Harley Stroh's Sailors on the Starless Sea. And, one of the things that just happens to be the way that those work is basically, these items are exactly where they are. And if you don't find them, you don't find them. And there's a decent chance that you won't find them. And the more I thought about it, I was like, wow, I really like that, because it would make me feel as if, I really have to risk things. I have to risk exploring the unknown. And it's not just because of some holy quest or anything like that. I'm not just trying to race to the end to kill the bad guy to get the XP and to finish the quest and feel good about what I've done for the day. But to actually take the time to try and get what I can out of a place, because it's something that I won't get otherwise. And that really spoke to me. And so it's funny because we fast forward to me running Old School Essentials and having this public game where there are no gimmies at all, none whatsoever. Basically, I'm on my own code of honor that says if you get something, it is because you earned it. No other reason. It's because you took the time to look for it. You took the risks. You got this thing, and it is useful and it is cool. And I've been basically using these guidelines subconsciously because I haven't really thought about. A lot of times when I make a blog post, I kind of forget about it. I kind of forget that I said anything because it's just a measure of what my thoughts are at a given time and me wanting to talk about it, basically. And so recently, with our Old School Essentials game, there have been so many situations where it's like, guys, if only you just took a little bit of time to to check this room a little bit more thoroughly. And then there is a chance that you would stumble on this one thing. And it's so good. It's so good. And it doesn't happen because they don't take the time. But then there are the moments when they do come across these things that are magical, that that they take the risk to try it and see what happens. And sometimes it's really cool. Sometimes it's incredibly dangerous. But at the same time, it's worth the risk because they can get something that's really extraordinary. So a lot of the way that your Old School Essentials magic items are basically they're tools for the dungeon for the most part. You have the ability to locate objects with one. You can use X-ray vision with another one. It's just basically means to navigate this unknown environment in a way that you wouldn't really have been able to otherwise as well. And this is something that the players don't inherently get usually. There are certain ways that they can go around it, but it offers like a little bit of extra, resources that are kind of out of the realm of what they're usually capable of. And that is really, really cool. And whenever you take that and then you look at what magic items are for modern gaming, magic items are often basically just making you stronger. And to me, I think that there is perhaps some virtue in having magic items that just make you stronger, but it's not really terribly interesting. In fact, it can be kind of the opposite of interesting, depending on how it's carried out. And it can soil the game, and particularly whenever you have a game that gives you so much power to start with, then it loses its what makes it cool, honestly. So whenever my characters, when I say my characters, my players' characters in the old school Essentials game, whenever they find these magic items, then they know that it's really worth it to endure the risks if they can help it in order to try and get some kind of benefit out of it. And, there are some people that have very strong opinions about how magic items should be provided, and that it's basically a way to keep the players engaged. And, that basically if you don't have a means for the players to keep growing in a lot of ways, then it gets boring for them. And I think that I can understand where that's coming from. I do think that perhaps my perspective is a little bit tainted by the fact that I'm usually the DM, in that I don't really care about character growth that much whenever I'm a player. I care about the experience more than anything. But, to give you an example, in my AD&D game, I've only ever had one magic item, and we've been playing for almost a year. And that magic item was something that I didn't find. It belonged to somebody else. And whenever he died, I took it over. And then we lost it. And I haven't found a magic item since. And I'm not hurting to find another magic item, really, because I love the experience. But I do recognize that perhaps I'm kind of weird in that way. So I think that I'm probably going to have to do something that goes over doing games where magic items are very, very rare, and how to try and keep the players engaged and give them a sense of progression in some way. Because really, you do need to have some kind of progression. If you have a game where you don't level up, you don't get better at things, and you don't find things that make you better at things, then you're basically playing a pure role-playing game that has no kind of gamified incentive to do anything. And, to me, I feel like that could be a fun experience if the scenario is really good. But as far as having a longevity to it, I think that it could be very limited. So, yeah, that's really it. That's really all I wanted to talk about. So if you have opinions on all this stuff, then throw them my way. So I'd love to hear them. Y'all take it easy.